Welcome back. I'm here today with Jay Brasher, and Jay ran a very successful career in the auto industry, starting some auto auctions, and also a few years back exited that. Now he's working on causes in his life. And Jay, I'd like to thank you for coming on today's show.
You bet, Al. I'm glad to be here.
So I want to start back with early in your coming out of high school and your schooling. What led you to do the things that you did, getting into the auto?
Well, I think probably it would start even before I got out of high school. My father grew up during the Depression. They closed his high school. So that was, I think the 10th grade was the limit of his education. And he was a true entrepreneur. And as things went along and the war started, I was born 3 months before Pearl Harbor. But I was the second sibling, and so my father didn't get drafted. He did a lot of things, but in 1949, when he was in the retail car business, he visited an auto auction in New York, in Albany, New York. In fact, it was billed as a mule auction, but the guy had started selling cars. And my father thought, boy, this is easy. You only have to work 1 day a week, and you can play the rest of the time. Soon he found out how wrong he was. But in 1949, when I was just 8 years old, he started an auto auction in Salt Lake City. The first week, he had 3 cars and sold 2. Second week, he had 2 cars and he didn't sell any. But in his career in the used car business, he was able to accumulate $50,000. And he was determined and decided that he would run this business until he either started making money or until he lost all that he had.
It's at that point in time when you're 8 years old?
Yeah.
At the time? Okay, so Salt Lake City auction, it started in, is it
1949.
1949.
Yeah.
So now how did you envision yourself? Was it from that early age to say, I'm going to step in and do what Dad's doing, or?
Yeah, I idolized my father, as many of us do.
Mm-hmm.
And even before then, when he was just in the used car business, he would go out on the road buying cars. And in the summertime, I'd go with him. And so it was, even at a young age, it was ingrained in me. And I started working at the auction during the summers when I was 9 years old. In fact, aside from a paper route that I had when I was 12 and 13, that was the only job I ever had where I collected a paycheck in my life. And the auto auction industry was in its infancy then, but it grew. And after Dad had been running it for a year, he was down to $6,000. He was getting close to the breaking point, and that's when it kind of turned around. And he had me out on the road buying cars when I was a teenager, when I was 15, 16 years old. Probably the first vehicle that I drove with a license, with a driver's license, was a car transport. When I was 16, 17, I had a little car, 47 Plymouth, that I'd take to school, but he'd send me out with this 5-car auto transport and say, I want you to buy 5 cars that you can bring back and we can wholesale them and make money. We'll see you when you get back. That's kind of how it started. And in those days, Salt Lake City wasn't considered the crossroads of the West. It was kind of out of the way. And to get the kind of inventory that he wanted in the business, we had to go out and buy it. So for the first 15 years of my life, that was my main job. I took 2 years out on a church assignment, came back, and got married at 25. But at that time I was traveling 3 or 4 days a week, just out buying cars.
Now, so the auto auction, you expanded, and then you built multiple locations.
We did. in the early mid-70s, we bought an auction in Sacramento
Okay.
that was existing, and then in the early 80s, we started an auction in Fontana, California.
And that actually ended up being one of the largest auctions, but I need to take a quick break. And Jay, when we get back, I want to have you explain on the Fontana auction what happened and where it went from little to big.
Okay.
I'm visiting here today with Jay Brasher, and we're talking about the business of the auto auction industry and how he started up, and we'll be right back after these messages.
I love fishing, with my family.
I think it would be easier to use a net.
It was so much fun.
The times when we are together, it makes it all the more worth it.
Having Dad teach them how to cast a fly rod, and
as long as we're doing stuff together, we're having fun.
Some people see a father and a son fishing together, while others see a succession plan. Welcome back. I'm visiting here today with Jay Brasher, and we've been visiting about your career in the auto auction industry. And we picked up in the 70s. You're purchasing the year for Fontana. Was it?
Actually, it was 1983 when we had our first auction there. Yeah.
And that actually ended up being one of the largest auto auction places in the western U.S. or how?
Well, actually, in the whole country, it was probably one of the 5 largest, and it grew quite rapidly. The reason we ended up in Fontana is we had a contract with General Motors and with Ford Motor Company in Salt Lake, and they wanted to open an auction down there, and they didn't like the setting with the auctions that were already there, so they told us if we would open an auction there, they would support it. We were looking for another place anyway, so I went down and spent 2 months or so looking for a location. Ended up in Fontana, which is 60 or 70 miles from the LAX airport where most of the cars were. And a couple of the people there that run rental outfits I knew really well. I talked to them about it, and they said, Jay, it's just too far out. We'll never pass 2 auctions to take cars out to Fontana. We'd encourage you to do something a little closer. And that was about the time of the movie Field of Dreams. I don't know if you remember it, but the theme line there was build it and they will come. Mm-hmm. And we gave it an awful lot of thought and decided that was the place to go. We had our first auto auction in December of 1983. Within 2 years, we were selling close to 2,000 cars a week, and our father passed away in 1986. When we started it, he and my mother were out of the country for a couple of years. When they got back, the auction was up and going, and then he had some medical problems and had some surgical procedures and didn't make it through. At the same time, General Electric was trying to get in the auction business, made us the proverbial offer that you can't refuse. And I had moved my family from Salt Lake City down there, and we were ready to go back anyway, and so we sold it. But that was kind of the springboard for leading us to have my brother's family and our family to have 8 auctions. We had auction in Salt Lake, we started one in Reno, we had one in Boise, we started one in Portland. My brother's side of the family, he lived in Sacramento. We had Sacramento, Eugene, Oregon, and Fresno, California. And it was getting pretty big. I told you earlier that last year, the last full year that we had it, we sold 246,000 cars, which is a significant number for a business that started out with 3 cars at the first auction and sold 2 of them.
It's impressive, and finally you decided that you would just sell it all and go to another chapter of your life.
Well, actually, my brother and I had both kind of moved on with our lives. We were involved in some church assignments and getting to the age, and we had some really talented young people in our family that were teed up to start running the auction. So independent of each other, my brother and I sold our interests to our sons or our son-in-laws, and then about last November, they got an offer and came to me, and I said, no, it's not enough. If you're going to sell, I don't want you to sell, but we massaged the offer and worked with them, and finally it caught up to a substantial offer, and they sold them. We had been already doing other things, and that kind of gets me to American Indian Services.
So Jay, what I need to do is I need to take a quick break to hear word from my sponsors, and after that I want to roll into this American Services and what you're doing now.
Okay, great.
We'll be right back after these messages. Since you can't take your wealth with you, spend time with your family. Welcome back. I'm here today with Jay Brasher, and we've been talking about how you had a very successful career, first starting with your father, then it moved to you and building the auto auction business in the U.S., some 246,000 cars a year, and then ultimately you ended up giving it to the kids and ultimately selling it. So you're now in a different chapter of your life, and everyone, as we go through processes in life, we realize that it's never about the money, although we may think it is and we go through it. But where are you at in life now? When you're looking out into the future, what are some of the things that you're looking to accomplish?
Well, that's interesting, Al. When we talked earlier today, I told you that our mindset, all of my siblings and I, started when we were young, following the example of our parents, and we're a fairly religious family, and we believe in sharing what we have. We believe that, know that what we have comes from a higher power than us, okay? And feel real obligation to help other people. Now, in the early 70s, my wife and I already had 7 children of our own, but there was a program called the Indian Placement Program, where you would agree to take a Navajo child during the school year and have them live with you in your home and go to school. We agreed to do that, and we got a young girl. She was just barely turned 8 years old. She came back to our house every year for 9 years. And we learned a lot about the plight of the American Indians and why they're in the situation that a lot of them are in today. And so it was an easy transition for me to make in the early 90s when I had a friend call me and wanted to introduce another friend that he had to me. He brought a man over to my house by the name of Dale Tingy, who, by the way, is 92 years old, still comes to work every day. But Dale was dedicated to helping the Native Americans. And so I got a little bit involved. Before long, I was on the board of directors. And then after being gone for 3 or 4 years, came back and almost 6 years ago, they asked me to be the director of American Indian Services. What we do there is we provide education opportunities for Native American young people. When I first came aboard, we were doing scholarships. I soon realized that because of dropout rates from K through 12, that the kids that really needed the help were in those years. And so we started concentrating on that as well. And it's all grown. 6 years ago, I think we gave out about 1,500 scholarships. Last year, we awarded 3,818 scholarships. Plus, we're in about 20 schools with reading programs. This summer, we have 2 STEM classes. We call them AIS Prep. One down in Blanding, Utah, and one in Roosevelt, Utah. And they're pretty intense classes. It's not a summer camp for the kids. It's teaching them STEM subjects and preparing them for college. And this program was started in Texas about 30 years ago with the Hispanic kids in mind, really. But it's a viable program. In fact, they make the claim that if you graduate, the prep thing lasts for 3 summers. It starts with 7th graders, 8th graders, then 9th graders. And their track record is that if a child goes through all 3 of those years and passes, that 90% of them go on to college.
It's quite an
I live in a
accomplishment.
fairly
Yeah.
affluent neighborhood,
Yeah.
and our neighbor kids don't succeed to that degree. So it's a 501c3. We raise money however we can.
Now, do you have events that you hold on a regular basis, or if a person wants to donate, how would they go about doing that or becoming involved?
Well, we have a website.
Okay.
It's AIS, AmericanIndianServices.com, and they can find out all about what we're doing there. Every year we have a banquet in the summer. We had it 3 weeks ago. We raised about $608,000 net. We have a lot of supporters. Johnny Miller, the golfer, has been a supporter for 30 years. We had a golf tournament just a week and a half ago that he takes the lead in. He does that with 2 or 3 events a year, and they bring in $125,000 or $150,000. I don't know if you've taken any video of what we're doing up here at the Trout Ranch, but I have a couple of events up here. I like to do things that I like to do that still will raise money for American Indian Services. Then we have a lot of corporate donors. We've got people that have given us $100,000 or $200,000 a year now for 5, 6, 7 years running, and we're adding to it all the time. So that's, you know, when you're in the philanthropy business, you get money wherever you can, and so that's what I spend my time doing now, is trying to raise money, because I can always spend a lot more than we raise. And it's interesting because we're not like some of the other 501c3s that you hear about. We bring about 96% of everything we raise to the bottom line. It takes us less than 5% of what we raise to run our organization. And actually, truth be known, that 5% comes from 3 board members. So if you were to make a donation with a very straight face, I could promise you that all of it would go towards our goal to help educate young Native American kids and try and follow them through life and help them be successful.
So once again, for the listeners, the website is
AmericanIndianServices.com.
We've been visiting here today with Jay Brasher. He is the director of American Indian Services. Jay, it's been a pleasure having you here on the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.